any questions that you have that that weren't able to be answered, or that are private and you don't want shared over the whole webinar, or questions you think of later, you can always email those to resilientrecovery@hud.gov. So on that note, I am going to turn it over to Jessie Handforth Kome, who is going to lead today's presentation.
Thank you. I'm Jessie Handforth Kome, and I'm here with Todd Richardson and Lindsay Johnson. And what we're going to do today is that Lindsay's going to walk you through a quick presentation on what resources we have available for applicants, both on topics related to NOFA, technical topics, and on topics related to resilience. And we'll also give you links over to what the Rockefeller Foundation has been posting. And then we're going to have a question and answer session where we're going to try to answer your questions or collect them and get them answered later. So with no ado, Lindsay.
Great. Thanks, Jessie. This will be just a real quick overview of, once again, where to download the NOFA, other resources that are helpful for resilience planning, and then what the Rockefeller Foundation is going to do. But first, we're going to start off by walking you through the grants.gov website and how to actually download the NOFA itself. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see the steps to go through this process. One other note, that these slides will be made available on the HUD Exchange website so that you can go back and actually pull the links out and follow the same steps that are going to be identified today. So, to actually download the NOFA, what we're going to do is have you go to the Applicants tab at the top of grants.gov, click on Apply for Grants, click on the red Download a Grant Application Package, enter the CFDA number, which is actually located on the slide, so you will have all of this information, and you click Download Package, over to Download. You do not have to put your email address, and you can choose, no, I do not wish to provide my email address at this time. And one thing I want to make sure that I highlight is the fact that I need you to click on Download Application Instruction to actually go forward in downloading the entire application package. So that is the link that you need to make sure you click on to open all of the attachments, the NOFA itself, as well as all the appendices that are down here, and then all the other pertinent information. So that is actually how you go forward in downloading the NOFA itself. And all of those instructions that I just went over can be found on this slide here. The other slide, or the other website I want to draw your attention to is the actual NOFA website, the Resilient Recovery website. And again, I'll share my screen with you to kind of go over the resources that you can find there. And so, as you guys have probably already figured out, we have all of our training materials located on this website at Resilient Recovery up here. You can actually go on and click on all of the webinar information. Again, as I had mentioned, these presentations and recordings will be archived onto the this specific website. So you are able to go in and actually click on the webinar materials and find this presentation that we're doing today. Also on this website is the instructions for downloading the application, as well as the NDRC technical correction, and then other information about eligible applicants, the frequently asked questions, which is a valuable tool throughout this process, as well as some other information. So that is what I want to make sure I pull out. Also, if you click over to this link over here on the right-hand side under Community Resilience Resources, oops, sorry. I'm going to go back so I can make sure I don't lose myself on the presentation itself so y'all can follow. This is going to be your community resilience portal, and I'm going to go back and show you where to find this. But this is an effort that we've been putting together resilience, data, information, other really key reports for you to help in developing planning and implementation and other tools. So I will go over that briefly with you guys. And once again, all of this can be found on this home page of the Resilient Recovery website. So if you just want to click on that, it'll take you to planning resources, implementation efforts, and ideas, and then natural hazards. And this is one thing that I think is pretty neat about this website, is that if you click on natural hazards, it's actually going to go through and break it out by drought, earthquake, whatever the hazard you're trying to mitigate or address through resilience techniques right here on the website. So please feel free to go through and look at this at your leisure. There's a lot of information, a lot of great reports and resources. The other resource portal I want to draw you to, found on the same page, is this cluster, this grouping of actual tools that you can use. We have Rebuild by Design information, information from the Georgetown Climate Center, as well as this Climate Resilience Toolkit that was just released back in November. And so I encourage you to go through and actually take a look and click through, because, again, there are a lot of great resources available at your fingertips, especially when you're starting this process. And then finally, I'm going to point you to the direction of the Rockefeller Foundation and their website that they've put together for the National Disaster Resilience Competition. They have and I have this on the PowerPoint for you as well, I'll click back over to, but they have a website put together with a list of their efforts that they're putting forth for their capacity building initiative. One of the things that's very important, and a lot of you probably already know this, but they do have a point of contact list on their website that each of the individual applicants have provided to Rockefeller. So by clicking on that, you're able to go in and see who's been designated by each applicant to lead the NDRC application process. So that is found on their website. Information about their resilience academies, as well as information about the Rockefeller team itself. One other thing I want to draw your attention to is that Rockefeller's put together an actual website that they're taking questions at. And so if you email resilience.academy@rockbound.org, you can contact them about their capacity building initiative. And again, all of that information can be found on this website, or on this slide right here. So with that brief overview, we're going to open it up to questions. And like Jessie said, both Jessie and Todd Richardson from PD&R are here in the room to answer any questions that you have. So we will turn it over to the question-answer function on the side of your screen to take any written questions. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask verbally, please go through the steps that George had discussed earlier in the presentation.
And while you're entering in your questions, which you can start typing now, I want to also let you know that there's one other website that we did not provide the link to, and that is the Paperwork Reduction Act website, where we have published the crosswalk checklist. And what was the other form we had? Where basically we published our forms for comment. We did get a comment during the first 60-day comment period, and it was a commenter who asked for an additional form, which would be a review summary checklist for the Appendix G, for the most impacted and distressed and unmet recovery needs review. So we are about to make that form, which will become a required form after the comment period, a 30-day comment period in OMB review. But you're going to be able to see it sometime during the next week. It'll pop up on the Paperwork Reduction Act website, and we will send out a blast email to everybody that has signed up for the emails, and make it available through a link on our webpage as well. So you can look at it, but if you want to give us comments on that form while it's out for comment, you're going to have to surf over to the Paperwork Reduction Act website where it gets posted. Once it's posted, we'll have a link for it, and then we can give that to you.
All right, and we do have questions coming in.
Cool.
So I will, let's go through this here.
So Meg is organizing us.
First question here is tribal consultation required only when there is a tribal reservation within or adjacent to the disaster-affected areas? If yes, is the tribal consultation limited to federally recognized tribes? And she has more questions to follow.
Okay, there's two things going on here, right? I can't answer your questions about whether consultation is required with a tribe for environmental review purposes, and you need to talk to an environmental review specialist, because there are places where the tribe may not be adjacent to you now, but there may be historic preservation or tribal resources that you don't know about until you consult with them. And we've had that happen a little too often for me, so definitely talk to your historic preservation officer and to your tribal contacts on that. In terms of consultation with, in the context, the community consultation related to making sure you have input from everybody who's going to be potentially want to have input on your proposal. We're not necessarily talking about federally recognized tribes. We're actually asking you to consult with all of your stakeholders, your potential stakeholders. And, you know, we're tackling consultation from a less, you know, technical, statutory-driven point of view. So you know your geography and who lives there. I don't. But I would say we want you to try to consult with anybody who's likely to be a stakeholder in your resilience and be able to give you feedback on, you know, threats and hazards and stresses and give you ideas.
All right, and another question along the lines of consultation. Does consultation with other states apply when the project scope proposed for funding does not contribute to another state's unmet recovery needs? Is there any exemption criterion? If required, is there a preferred means of documentation?
So let me take a quick look at the NOFA where we lay out the consultation question. We're going to go quickly, or more or less quickly, over there. Of course, my copy of the NOFA. I finally got a clean one, and now I can't find anything because it doesn't have all my marks on it. Oh, look, she has Appendix I. What we're looking for is, you know, the broadest possible look at resilience in your area. If you were going for a more honed in, you know, a smaller target area for whatever reason, and then there can be perfectly good reasons for that, you might not have to have much state-to-state consultation. I must say that having gone to one Rockefeller Academy and watched what happened when the states start talking to each other across some interesting boundaries, they started out thinking that they didn't have anything in common and couldn't help each other, and in every single case I watched, and Stan is saying it's happening again in the Kansas City Academy, they came up with some things that they thought strengthened their resilience by talking to other states. So I would say the minimum consultation between states that's required would be whatever is exactly the same as for your con plan, which may be essentially nothing for many states. But there isn't really a maximum. You have to follow the logical ideas about your proposal. And remember, we don't have projects yet. If you are talking to us in phase 1 about a project, you are probably not going to be responsive to the prompts, and you need to be thinking more about a proposal and an idea. And so your consultation for phase 1 is more about exploring your threats and hazards and stresses and ideas and potential populations affected by them and their ideas than it is about, it's not about citizen participation in the traditional CDBG sense where you're describing your activities and getting feedback on your allocation of funding. That's different than consultation about your threats and hazards and your cool idea.
Okay, sounds good.
I hope that answers the question. That was a little, the question was a little, the boundaries weren't clear to me.
Next question. If a county is designated as the most impacted in distress through the CDBG-DR, but the area of unmet need proposed for funding does not include the entire county, is it accurate that consultation with all UGLUGs within the county is required, and then they have to demonstrate the consultation?
I do think it's actually accurate that you do have to consult with the whole county, and I think it's going to be especially accurate in terms of that it's required if you have a housing issue. There is no county in the country that I know of that has a housing submarket that's limited to just a portion of the county. But I believe that it's actually literally, if you follow the rules through, that you do have to actually consult with the entire county. You may do more detailed consultation if you discover a particular need in a particular neighborhood and you want to drill down. The documentation for demonstrating consultation is completing the consultation checklist. That's part of Appendix I, and providing that is one of your exhibits.
Next question. Is it accurate that unmet need for the entire most impacted and distressed area must be demonstrated even if the proposed project is for the most unmet need within the most impacted and distressed area?
So this is Todd Richardson from Policy Development and Research. If I'm reading the question correctly, if you can meet the unmet need requirements for a smaller geography than the most impacted and distressed area, then you still will meet the threshold requirement here. So if you don't, if for example, I guess if you've got continuing housing damage in a very small area and that's your target area and that meets the threshold we've set here, then you're fine.
Even if it's one of the counties we declared most impacted.
Even if it's one of the counties we declared as most impacted and distressed.
But we do want you to consult with the rest of the county. It's just the way the provisions all come together. I'm also getting this kind of question in the mailbox somewhat from people who are under the mistaken conviction that the only national objective in play is the low and moderate income national objective, and that is not true. Low mod, slum blight, and urgent need, all three national objectives are possible. So if you want to concentrate on a low and moderate income population, we are not going to stop you. But I just wanted to make it clear to people that that have been insisting to me that there's only one national objective in the CDBG program, that there are actually three.
Actually, the next one goes to CDBG-eligible projects, the next question. Will this funding cover CDBG-eligible projects within the disaster-declared county, but not within the identified sub-target area, mid-earn target area?
So, I mean, I think this question might be stated backwards, but can you do CDBG-eligible project? And this would be a Phase 2 question, because remember, Phase 1 is not about projects. That are in the declared county, but not in the area that you demonstrated to us and got through threshold. The only time that can happen is if you need those CDBG-eligible, CDBG-DR-eligible projects outside of the mid-urban area in order to address the need you identified inside the area. So if, for example, your most impacted and distressed area with unmet recovery needs happens to be in an area that has, say it has housing needs, and it's short a lot of housing, but it is in an area where HUD site and neighborhood standards will not let you build. You must, because of affirmatively furthering fair housing, meet the housing need for that area by building somewhere else that is still suitable for those to meet the needs of that population in that area. That might be possible. It might also be possible if you have a geographic constraint for infrastructure. You've identified a need to control and do water management in that mid-urban area. But to do it, you have to go upstream and build a structure or open up a floodplain. But you're still serving the need you identified that's in your mid-urban target area. Those are cases that it's possible. The third version is if you need to protect your recovery by building a structure or doing some kind of activity outside the mid-urban area that will protect the recovery inside the mid-urban area. The classic example is, of course, a levee. But there are other situations in which you might want to help a major employer to expand or something because it's in the same job market area and you've identified a loss of jobs as part of your disaster recovery, unmet recovery needs. So there are some cases where you can assist something outside, that's physically outside your mid-urban area in order to meet a need inside. But that's really a phase 2 issue. You should be thinking about it now, and your big idea may include, you know, the room for that, essentially.
Sounds good.
Do you have anything beyond that for Todd? Okay.
And actually, this question relates to phase 2. If a target area isn't identified in phase 1, will we be able to add them as part of phase 2?
Yes, the NOFA says that specifically.
I like those types of answers. The next question, is interoperability communications an eligible project for phase 2 development?
Probably not. It's going to have a problem if you run through the list of ineligible activities. We essentially ruled out things that are equipment, temporary related. I can't remember the exact list, and I would have to, I mean, it's going to take me a little while to dig that out, but it is in the list of the of ineligibles, I believe. Interoperable communications equipment is brutally difficult with CDBG-DR anyway. Because it is almost entirely forward-looking and almost never has tieback. It's very, very, very difficult. I just can't even remember when we've done them.
Okay. The next question, will CDBG, NDRC, which I think just the CDBG-NDR, funds provide funding to projects in greater resilience areas within the declared counties?
We are, I'm assuming right now that you've got an area that's a declared county or a sub-county area in that county that has the most impacted and distressed with unmet recovery needs, and somehow you're going to address an unmet recovery need. You have to have tieback to an unmet recovery need. But we will allow you to do that in a way that makes you more resilient. We cannot fund any activity or project that does not have a tieback. So this is going to be an extremely case-specific answer. We're going to try to provide more examples as we head toward projects in phase 2, but I can't say often enough that phase 1 is really about coming up with a path, an idea, partners, consultation, you know, building a greater understanding of what your threats and hazards and stresses are. It's not yet about projects. You will have a very limited time to pull a project out if you get invited to phase 2, but be really careful that you don't, do that thing they call in basketball, thinking to the next game. You need to think about the game you're in, too, and get that done before you jump on just thinking about projects.
Okay. Next question, is there a cap on matching leveraged projects in greater resilience areas?
I really don't understand this greater resilience area thing at all. That's not a term of art for us, and I can't tackle it. We don't have any caps on match, but the project that you provide match for has to have a tieback to your unmet recovery need, to the most impacted and distressed area with unmet recovery needs. It must. There's not you can't go to the next county over and do a project if that does not benefit your mid-earn area. You can't. We can't pay for that. If you have other funds that will do that, then it logically connects. Then you can count that as supporting leverage. And we're working on an FAQ that, because we're getting a lot of questions about what's the difference between a supporting commitment and what we'll count as 100% for leverage and what we're going to count a half. And we'll be getting that up pretty shortly. We just got the language worked out with our lawyers today. So that's coming. We didn't expect the leverage questions in phase 1 that we're starting to get, so we're working on that as fast as we can.
Okay. The next question about public comment. When does the public comment period begin? March 2nd, 2 weeks, 14 days is before March 16th. Is posting on a web page enough, or is more required?
You need to have enough time to actually plausibly react to the comments, because you have to submit your reaction to the comments and have enough time to make changes as well. Same as regular citizen participation. And we are madly looking up citizen participation alternative requirement, which is let's see where we dumped that. It's in the NOFA proper. It's also repeated again in Appendix A, I believe. So you have to have at least one public hearing and a reasonable opportunity for citizen comment. We do say prominent posting on your official website, but we also encourage you to notify affected citizens through electronic mailings, press releases, statements by public officials, media advertisements, public service announcements, and or contacts with organizations located in or serving the target area or neighborhood. And remember your LEP, your limited English proficiency, and make sure you have it, program information available during this time in the appropriate languages for the same amount of time. We require electronic submission, but we're only encouraging all that other stuff. So the website's mandatory. The other stuff, other things are encouraged. But please, please, please do, reach out to the people you consulted with, the groups you consulted with, through your partners, and let people know that it's out there and ask for comment. You're only going to increase your resilience by soliciting comment. You don't want to miss those chances. Somebody needs to put their phone on mute. We can hear you talking and your phone just rang.
The next question is sources and uses documentation for unmet needs in Phase 1, Factor 2 narrative necessary, as in the case for Exhibit B?
The sources and uses documentation, if it is in Exhibit B, you can just cite to it in the Phase 1, Factor 2 narrative. Don't bother putting the whole table back in there. Just cite over to it. Tell us that it's over there. And make sure you note that in your crosswalk checklist, and we'll find it. You don't need to repeat things, although occasionally to respond accurately or fully to your, or clearly to your in your narrative response, you're going to have to restate some things or summarize them. But if you already have it in your threshold response, tell us that it's there. We'll go look. We don't need these things to be longer than they have to be.
The next question deals with attachments as well. The NOFA indicates that attachments, unless otherwise noted, do not count against the page limits. There are 8 attachments in standard forms described. Can additional attachments be included to further explain data presented in the narrative portion that are not explicitly listed in the NOFA? If so, is there a page limit on the number of attachments that can be included?
No, you can't add additional attachments. You have to use the attachments and exhibits that we've provided in the standard forms. We do allow you to submit maps, data charts. I mean, I guess you call them charts. You know,
tables.
Tables, not tables. No, but not extra text, not extra explanatory text. You need to use that factor narrative space to make your case. It's already much longer than any other HUD competition. We gave you a lot of space in those factor narratives, so use that. But we're serious about those attachments being the attachments and those exhibits being the exhibits and the way the page limits work. But if you want to give us a map, there's no page limits on the maps. You can give us links to maps, things like that. And the threshold response doesn't have a page limit on it. It just has a suggested number of pages.
Okay.
For the Appendix G thresholds, most impacted, distress, and unmet recovery needs, which are your critical ones.
Okay. That is the last written question we have. George, I'm going to turn it back over to you just to go over the process for asking verbal questions if anyone has any, and give anyone a chance to type in additional written questions if they'd like.
I think there was one about multiple target areas you just went by that I don't think we answered.
Yeah, it just came in.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
We just got one more written question.
Thank you. When you're submitting a proposal for multiple target areas in multiple counties, how do the narratives work out with regards to page limits? Would each target area need to identify factor 1, factor 2, et cetera, et cetera?
The NOFA actually, if you read it carefully, you're going to spot that there are places where we give you extra pages for extra target areas if you need them. And this extra target area thing is really why we didn't put a hard page limit onto the Appendix G. But we do want you to think about things that those target areas might have in common. To the extent that you can answer, provide one answer that serves for all or for a subgroup of those target areas, that would be good. We're looking for more comprehensive complex, unified thinking, and not for just a batch of separate target areas that you package together that don't have, a common, or at least some common elements and rubric and approach. But you can go through the NOFA, and there are various places that specifically say you may have an additional page limit, page up for each additional partner or each additional target area. I'll try to get an FAQ out identifying all those places. We do have a webinar coming up on compiling your application, too.
The next question, what is meant by a comprehensive risk approach to analyzing needs in Phase 1, Factor 2?
That's language that we use to say that we're not asking you to say, we had a flood, so we're only going to talk about floods. Or we had a whatever the disaster was, and that's the only disaster we're going to talk about. And we only want to mitigate against that. We want you to actually sit down and think about what are the risks that you are facing? What are your priority risks? What are the most things are most likely to happen? What are the things that are maybe very unlikely to happen but cause unbelievable levels of damage if they did happen, or cascading failures or whatever, and really think about comprehensively all the different kinds of risks and threats and hazards and whatever stresses or whatever language you want to use, because FEMA and the international resilience community and Rockefeller and all these, everybody in the research community, they tend to use different language. When HUD looks at it, we just say, look, we want you to be more resilient socially, economically, environmentally, physically. You know, we want you to think about what is the world you're in and do smart planning that takes those risks into account. And that's what we mean by comprehensive risk approach to analyzing needs.
That sounds great. So, George, if you want to give verbal or instructions again on verbal questions, we can wait to see if any additional written questions come in.
Sure. Just a reminder to everyone that if you'd like to ask a question over the phone, you should, I'm going to switch back over to these slides, I think, Lindsay, and I'll run through them again. Just a reminder that if you'd like to ask a question verbally, to look and see if there's a phone icon to the left of your name on the participant panel. And if there is not, please click on the tab at the top of the WebEx screen that says Event Info. There's a number here called an identity code. You can enter that code into your telephone keypad, and that will link your telephone to the WebEx software. And then all you have to do after you see that telephone icon next to your name is to press the little hand icon at the bottom of that participant panel, and then all of us panelists will know that you'd like to ask a question, and when your turn comes up, we can unmute you and ask you to go ahead.
Hi, George. This is Jessie again. We got another question in on the thing while we're working toward our phone one.
Yep.
Sure. I'll read it. Is it necessary to identify additional unmet needs above and beyond the threshold requirements listed in Exhibit B? If so, is sources and uses documentation necessary?
The answer is, for threshold, if you get by the threshold of having at least one target area, HUD's going to score your application. But if you think that your proposal is bigger and is going to cover more target areas, and eventually you're going to maybe want to propose projects that cover more than one target area, you're going to have to justify and show that each of those meets the Appendix G requirements, the most impacted and distressed with unmet recovery needs, if that's where you want to spend your CDBG-DR fund. And in such a case, if you are doing, I guess it's infrastructure you have to do sources and usage for,
yeah,
then the answer would be yes. It depends on what you're up to is the answer. And the NOFA says that.
Okie dokie. All right. We have another question come in. As a local government, should we take the Rockefeller City Resilience Framework under specific consideration in our response?
In your response to the NOFA, you need to respond to the NOFA. If you learn things from the Rockefeller Resilience Framework and it makes sense to you and they help inform your answers, that's cool, but we're not requiring you to use Rockefeller's approach.
One other question, I saw that someone had asked for me to put the links back on the screen, and I was wondering if that person could let me know which exact links they are interested in viewing again.
Okay, and George, do we have any call on the phone?
No, it doesn't look like anybody has a question on the phone. Lindsay, I did want to say about the links that, you know, because of the WebEx software, you can't actually click on the link and go to the website now.
Somebody asked me a question I want to answer.
But what folks?
Okay. A cold.
Oh, yeah. But folks should know that these slides are posted within a few days of the webinar, are posted on the HUD Exchange where Lindsay demonstrated earlier. And so you can actually go in and download the slides and access the links themselves through there.
Right.
And it looks like we do have someone who'd like to ask a question over the phone. So
okay.
I'm going to unmute David Haddis.
Yes, thank
David,
you.
David, you should be on the line.
My question relates to the relationship between the comprehensive approach and the tie-back to unmet needs. The answer that was given on the comprehensive approach was that the risks should be considered also in relation to disasters other than the particular declared disaster. The tie-back to unmet needs relates to a particular declared disaster.
Exactly.
Can you give an example of what a comprehensive approach that was tied back to an unmet need? Not a specific, not something that has been proposed to you, but what do you have in mind?
No,
for example,
you're missing the point, actually, David. We are, for the very, very first time on the CDBG chassis, asking you to think bigger than just what can you fund with CDBG. We are saying take a comprehensive, really serious, real-world, planning-based, comprehensive risk approach to thinking through all your risks, bigger than you'll be able to fund with your CDBG-NDR funds should you get them in Phase 2. We know we can't fund everything. We are trying to use our money as seed money so that when you come up with your big idea and if you get invited to Phase 2, you will extract a CDBG-eligible proposal out of your thing out of your big idea or your concept, and that proposal will be tied back. But maybe your overall idea has components in it that are not tied back, that you are going to have to pursue other funding for, possibly across 10 or 15 or 20 years. We are really, really trying to get people to think bigger than, this is just a CDBG project I want to fund. We want you to do the comprehensive risk thinking and prioritizing in Phase 1. That's what we're about. So the two things it isn't take a comprehensive risk approach that leads to absolutely everything you do being able to be CDBG-NDR eligible. That's not going to happen. I just don't see that as that's what we're specifically not trying to do. For the very first time, CDBG is asking you to bring there's a lot of points hanging in there on leverage and long-term commitments for things that CDBG can't pay for. In order to pick up those points, you're going to have to go bigger and think bigger than just what CDBG can fund.
I see. Thank you. That
sure.
clarifies it.
Thanks, David. Does anyone else have any verbal questions? I haven't seen any new chat questions come through.
I did want to let folks know, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but I've got about 25 pages worth of candidates for the FAQs because the mailbox has picked up quite a bit. And we've got Lindsay and Duncan and Sunari all working on honing them down and turning them around, and we'll be getting out a big update to the FAQs pretty soon. And one of the things that's going to happen is that we are actually going to withdraw 2 of the previous answers, one of which we've already signaled. Question 35 is out of date and was replaced by the technical amendment to Appendix G. The other one that's coming is a question that we got a couple of times about repairs and projects that were already complete but were not repaired resiliently. And we're working on, if you were one of the people that asked that, we're going to be altering that answer somewhat, but we don't have the final wording worked out yet. So be taking a look for that. It'll be coming out, I hope, in the next couple of weeks. We have a draft in process. So do we have any other additional questions? It looks like we still have, a fair number of people still on the line listening in. If you have a question, Todd and I are here. And happy to tackle answers.
Anything new? That's the only question. Oh.
We got
talking about.
Anybody still out there? Going once, going twice?
One question just came into the,
cool.
the Q&A, Jessie.
Todd, it's the question specifically. Did you look into the QWI and separations counting as job losses?
No, but we'll put that in the FAQ, and I apologize. I do now remember we had that question, and I did not follow up.
What is a QWI?
I am not familiar with that acronym.
I remember the separations, but anyway.
We'll look into it.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that, and we'll hound Todd for that.
Quarterly workforce indicators.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Does anybody else have a question?
Capacity question just came in.
Okay.
Is the state a required applicant versus a cabinet-level agency, and would other state agencies, insofar as financial procurement and internal control conducted by other cabinet-level agencies, appropriate to demonstrate capacity?
Sure. In the state CDBG program, the governor can designate whatever agency or agencies that the governor wants to administer the CDBG program. So the governor could, for example, say that, give an example, the Office of Administration in Louisiana was going to handle being the fiscal agent and handle coordinating and editing all applications and be HUD's point of contact, but that the Louisiana Economic Development Agency, I forget what the name is, and I'm sorry, they're going to smack me around for that, would be responsible for the economic development program, and that, some other agency would be responsible for maybe doing environmental review or something like that. That's fine. Just lay it out and explain who does what. If your Treasury Department is going to be responsible for doing all the DR stuff and locks and internal control, but your Commerce Department is going to, actually run the programs, tell us that. To us, the state is the state. We will want to know, of course, who has been delegated to be allowed to sign the 424 and the certification. It's less complicated in the city because it has to be the chief executive officer on some of these things, but state agencies, the governor is allowed to designate.
There might be a...
And we'll count them for capacity, even if you're telling me about other departments in the city, too, both. Is there a follow-up?
Yes. Does the state have to be the applicant, or can it be a cabinet-level agency?
This must be coming from a... That's an interesting thing. We don't require the governor's office or the governor to be the applicant. It can be at the same kind of agency level that state CDBG allows. So but it doesn't have to be your state CDBG agency. It could be a different cabinet level agency. What we require, and this is because of the environmental review delegation, is that it is the state itself. We'll look to make sure that you are essentially a cabinet level agency, that you're capable of speaking for the state and making the certifications for environmental review. That's sort of the statutory level below which we cannot go. Typically, we just basically say, are your employees state employees? If they are, usually you're a state agency enough for us to say, yes, you're a state agency.
Any other questions? Any verbal questions? All right.
Okay, I think that we're going to call this one a wrap, unless you're typing really, really fast right now. And we'll go back to working on the answers to all the questions coming into the mailbox. And remember that I'm still there at resilientrecovery@hud.gov, willing to answer your questions. And I also, if you send in a question for Todd, I'll send it over to him from the mailbox, and then I remind him every few hours whether that I haven't gotten the answer yet. He takes care of getting it. So these were great questions today. This was really fun. And I look forward to doing it again at the next webinar or so.
Technical corrections too?
Yes.
Or the technical amendment?
Remember, the PRA form is coming out, and we will also put it out on grants.gov as a technical amendment to the NOFA as soon as we get approval. So get your comments in, and we will get that thing out to you as fast as we can.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, George.
Thank you.